My name is Randolph Croxton. I am an architect and an author. Trump, 2025 to 2028. How did we get here? Differences in policy or ideology in the 2024 election do not explain how we got here. To the contrary, this was a national undermining of our sense of security that prompted a survival reflex that has opened the door to the greatest threat of all. Trump's victory may have been stunning, but the pattern of his winning margins reveal exactly how he won. Small shifts in opinion across all groups and regional boundaries tell the story. These are basic changes of perception and behavior. Three primary questions are central and were constantly asked during the election, and I intend to answer all three of them here. Number one, how can this election be so close? Number two, why are Democrats so timid while Republicans are flat out aggressors? Number three, how can Republicans and Democrats look at the same facts and yet come to opposite conclusions? The answer is the inborn difference in the way each of us sees the world, our mindsets. I have written 2 books on this individuality of perception and behavior: A Convergence of Two Minds in 2015 and Cogenesis in 2023. Both explain the fundamental ground truth of the 2024 election. Trump's 2 victories are an extension of the fear-based strategy first used in the landslide election of Richard Nixon in 1972. Nixon won 60% of the popular vote, which I agree does not sound like a landslide, but because evolution imparts immovable mindsets to approximately 40% of the population, conservative, in our case, Republicans, and also an immovable 40% of progressives, in our case, Democrats. Only approximately 20% of all mindsets of humankind can actually see both sides of the argument, and they typically decide elections. So we have Nixon receiving 40%, the Republican tribe, plus all of the independent vote, which is 20%. So this equals 60%. This is a maximum share of the popular vote that has not been exceeded in the 20th or the 21st century. Nixon and the Republicans watched in total amazement when George Wallace, in his 1968 racist campaign, captured 5 southern states and 9.9 million of the popular vote. The Republican Southern strategy was born to get those rural votes. Reagan's 1980 Make America Great Again, MAGA won, and the 1994 midterm Republican contract with America brought increasing levels of racism and disruption, but the harsh tactics were taken to the next level by the Tea Party in the 2010 midterm election against Obama, where Republicans took the House of Representatives. None of these elections pushed fear of migrants, racism, intimidation, and direct violence to the levels of Trump and his MAGA 2 followers. The Southern strategy in the 14 elections from Nixon 1972 to Trump 2024 upended the Republican Party, pushing out moderate mindsets with a campaign of primal fear aimed at the survival instinct of the human mindset. Our mindset is a unique interconnection between the brain's two hemispheres. This is a key to our survival. Our left hemisphere is aggressive, assertive, analytical, seeing the world in black and white, essentially primed for quick action. Survival by physical attack or physical defense. Our right hemisphere mind sees the world in context, shades of gray, and possessing very high emotional intelligence. Survival by reconciliation or avoidance of attack. We need both of those strategies. For example, if you're facing an attacker with a knife, there is no absolute answer to the immediate survival question: fight or flight. Either answer can be correct or incorrect. In one instance, the election to fight leads to death. In another situation, the election to fight leads to escape and survival. This is what would be called an indeterminate problem or challenge. There is no way. You cannot evolve to a correct answer. There is no evolution of the mind to solve this problem. Evolution has solved this problem by another means, by maintaining a resilient balance, a spectrum of mindsets. So across humankind, you always have those who will fight and those who will escape. So in that way, if survival is possible, you will always have survivors. To form different mindsets, 250 million nerve fibers uniquely interconnect our hemispheres at birth. We have a range from high maleness left to an opportunity-based world, high femaleness right. We experience the relationship between our two minds as a silent internal conversation, which is our deliberative consciousness. For example, if we're a victim of betrayal in life, we deliberate how we're going to respond. Is it going to be revenge, which is maleness, which may typically be the first thing that comes to mind, or the other alternative, in the range of forgiveness at the other extreme, femaleness. So deliberative consciousness, we all experience this. This is the dialogue that occurs inside of everyone. And much more language is spoken internally than ever gets spoken verbally. The hardcore 40% of Republicans, maleness, tend to be assertive and inflexible, while the 40% hardcore of Democrats, femaleness, tend to be negotiable and seeking common ground. In the case of a proposed ceasefire, for instance, Republicans tend to see this as a trick by the aggressor to rearm, therefore distrust, while Democrats would tend to see this as a step towards peace or trust. In other words, they see the same facts but come to opposite conclusions. This answers two of the three primary questions I posed at the beginning. The Civil War is the source book for the Trump MAGA fear survival playbook. The North transition from rural to urban began very early, shortly after the War of 1812. New England textile mills, the steam engine, the telegraph, railroads advanced northern urbanization, creating jobs and this is important, that launched European migration into the U.S. Progress through invention and innovation within such a multicultural society is the essence of the innovative, empathetic, right hemisphere mind. The South, a 12,000-year-old social model from the agricultural revolution, depended on slave labor, was rural and insular, living off the land within nature's hard lessons of self-sufficiency and inherently defending the status quo of slavery, which obviously includes white supremacy, is the essence of the aggressive, protective left hemisphere mind. These two views of the world, one rural, one urban, were so deeply, I would say, biologically opposed that a civil war and the death of 620,000 Americans was the price paid by our nation. Now, quite interestingly, and to the benefit of America, after the Civil War, a 100-year political truce ensued. From 1865 until 1969, the rural population was politically split between the Democratic Party in the South, which remained anti-Lincoln, and the Republican Party in the rest of America. As America grew following the Civil War, both parties had rural, urban, and moderate voters. The nation flourished beyond imagination, growing from 30.8 million to 200 million by 1969. Immigration, again, importantly, was 50 million, 1 in 3 of that growth. In this period, the United States became the largest economy and the most powerful military on earth. 1972 began the undoing. During the period 1972 to 2016, the Republicans expanded their southern rural support and that of like-minded rural communities nationwide. The political truce was definitely coming undone. The 2024 Trump MAGA primal scream of invasion by the other and claiming the Democrats were purposely opening the borders to caravans of murderers and rapists elevated the Southern strategy into a call to arms for rural America. The threat penetrated the survival instinct of the nation, forcing a hard split in the independent vote, and in this manner, the rural-urban Civil War divide was reborn in modern times at nation scale in a too-close-to-call election. This answers the last primary question: why was the election so close? The two sides of the brain are interdependent, as I have suggested, but importantly not equal in an essential element. The left hemisphere's demand for physical security must be met because neither an individual or a nation can survive without it. This explains the national, if small, shift towards Trump. This priority does not mean, for instance, that a woman cannot lead a nation if she has a dominant left hemisphere, being assertive, calm under fire, analytical, and decisive. Such no-nonsense qualities have been evident in leaders of the United Kingdom, Margaret Thatcher, Germany, Angela Merkel, and Israel, Golda Meir. Kamala Harris has these qualities, which were on full display on the night of the debate. The Harris election team ran a near miraculous campaign, given the late start that she was handed. However, the term happy warrior and the upbeat public campaign needed the balance of a strong assertion of her fitness as commander-in-chief and Trump's weakness as commander-in-chief. The debate confirmed her command of that moment, but could not overcome the relentless charges of weakness at the border, transsexuals as the other, and the Democrats' admittedly past, not current, but nonetheless politically suicidal words, defund the police. On 3 consecutive presidential election nights, we have watched the growing sea of Trump-red rural counties surrounding the blue urban centers. This is a well-documented rural shift that paved the way for the oldest, deep-seated, and totally discredited form of governance, the strongman autocracy. And here I'm just going to pause for a minute to remember bring forth the forgotten origin of America. Humans began organizing in groups larger than bands of 12 to 18 family-related hunter-gatherers about 100,000 years ago. When those 250 million nerve fibers that I mentioned earlier began to carry our silent internal conversation between the hemispheres, real-time access to both ancestral legacies of humankind, our deliberative consciousness emerged. We became self-aware. Seizing our new agency, we began to evolve the environment, and our population exploded. For 99,752 years, with the sole exception of the Roman Republic, left-dominant strongmen, tyrants, dictators, and kings ruled. If we think for a moment, well, what about other men, if it was male-focused at that time, what about the right-dominant, innovative, empathetic man? Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, Botticelli. They need not apply. They have neither the thirst for power nor the stomach for the aggression. So they found a way to operate within a dominated environment. The key to everything is what happened in 1700s Europe. A revolutionary set of ideas and values emerged. They were the origin of America, the origin of democracy. This period was the Enlightenment, or the Age of Reason, which set aside medieval superstition, witchcraft, and rumor with a central abiding thesis. There is a knowable truth, and it can be found through science. In addition to that, the parallel recognition was that absolute power corrupts absolutely, and that shifting power to the governed, we the people, was the one way under the rule of law to counter corruption. Seizing on these philosophical points, in 1776, the United States of America became the world's first constitutional government under the rule of law and the consent of the governed. The genie was out of the bottle. In merely 248 years, unbelievable really, the United States rose from insignificance on the world stage to be the strongest economy by far, the strongest military by far, by unleashing the innovation and creativity of those right dominant mindsets which were held back under strongman rule. The flourishing of U.S. cinema, music, media, literature, architecture, engineering, medicine, and leadership in military science and the space age collectively defined the modern era. The first human and the next 11 humans to walk on the surface of the moon were Americans. No one has followed. The right dominant mind is the first target of repression under strongman rule. Science, expertise, a free press, these are the enemy of strongman rule, which I would only characterize as rule by gut. The free press, being free of intimidation, is most certainly not the enemy of the people. It is the champion of the people against the excesses of large-scale, controlled, powerful government and corporations, the two that can overwhelm the individual. Democracy goes much further. Democracy frees up the interdependence of all mindsets, understanding that there is no good or evil to either side. Both are interdependent and essential, composing the full range of variation required for a viable nation. For example, left-dominant firefighters, police, and soldiers who run into danger. Right-dominant cryptographers who broke the Japanese and German codes in World War II. And the most important is the collaboration of opposite mindsets. Right-dominant Oppenheimer, left-dominant General Groves, who collaborated to conceive, build, and deliver the atomic bomb in World War II. We would be a vastly different world if the United States was not, and up until now, a democracy. Democracies complain about immigrants wanting in, but autocracies have a much worse problem. The best minds and those with initiative want to get the hell out. Their outflow of human capital is paralleled by the outflow of financial capital from the strong men and oligarchs who transfer their corrupt funds to London, Paris, New York City, and Zurich, where it is stable and safe. Lacking innovation, autocracies steal from the democracies through espionage, intellectual property theft, and cyber crime. The fatal flaw of autocracy is its black and white view of the world. A left-dominant mind, totally in control, even a brilliant one, even a genius, sees only a sliver of reality. By contrast, every 4 years, millions of Americans choose the direction of our country, a national supercomputer of all mindsets from all points of view. In the wake of Richard Nixon's criminality, we chose the integrity of Jimmy Carter, who delivered peace between Egypt and Israel. In the dark days of the Iran hostage crisis, we chose the strength of Ronald Reagan, who delivered the breakup of the Soviet Union and the end of the Cold War. In this manner, democracy creates the deliberative mind of the nation, and a flexibility which is an enormous strategic advantage in terms of the viability of our nation. Democracy has 3 principles. All 3 are currently compromised and under attack. Consent of the governed, attack on the electoral system as rigged. Our electoral system is the exemplar of free and fair elections on planet Earth. Just now, we have put Trump back in the White House. I can think of no stronger counter argument to any rigging. Finally, the rule of law, not finally, that's number 2, rule of law, attack ongoing, the attack of the DOJ, Department of Justice, the FBI, and the courts. And finally, number 3, belief in science, constant attack on the truth through disinformation, rumor, and lies. What happened? Here is my after action report for the 4 years 2021 to 2024. Congress failed in their power to impeach. The Department of Justice failed through delay. And the Supreme Court failed by direct obstruction of the rule of law, as it must have been, should have been applied to January 6, 2021. Now, what is our action plan going forward, 2025 to 2028? Of course, fundamentally, we must fight to preserve the 3 principles of democracy until 2026, when Congress must be taken back. In 2028, only if there is success in 2026, there will be the opportunity to reclaim democracy. Here I am talking about the team that will be required. Moderate Republicans, moderate Democrats, moderate independents. It has to be a collective American response, remembering the origins of our country, to step forward in these 2 elections to reclaim democracy. Nothing about this will be easy. Thank you for your time.